Hi and welcome. I'm Keith Reynolds. This is SmarketPlace Live, and we are a show about sales, marketing, and rock and roll. Tom and I met networking and found that our first band was Boston in the same year, 1978, on the same tour. And we have been exploring how sales, marketing, and rock and roll are all intertwined. Today, no matter what business you're in, if you have a public facing component to your brand, then you need to be using creativity just like a band does, and you got to sell stuff. And so we explore that with our guests. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Always happy to be with you, Keith. We got a special guest today, too, and that's going to be a lot of fun to explore. And a week from today, shall I announce it?
Yeah.
A week from today, we'll be live from the Rolling Stones concert parking lot.
Denver, Colorado.
So that'll be a real treat as well.
And the following Thursday, I'll be doing this from the Rolling Stones in Chicago.
All right, that's great.
So we eat our own dog food.
That's right.
Well, without further ado, Keegan, welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great to be here with you today.
So, where do you hail from? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we'll.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am a mountain man. I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Southern Virginia. I'm a coach. I love helping people take their dark times, struggles, obstacles, and turn them into their greatest stepping stones. I'm up here. Got two boys and three dogs, and we love the mountaintops. So, yes, sir. Love what I do. I think at the end of the day, it's all about impact. It's all about whose life you are impacting, the change you're creating, what legacy you're leaving behind. So that's what I'm all about.
That, bridging to our theme of sales and marketing, right? That you put your best foot forward when you do the work you talk about.
Absolutely. So, well, it's really interesting, Keith. I was thinking about this for a while, and I had this premonition of being in this gray Camry. It was in the 90s. I was with my mom, and we're driving down the road, and this Sublime song came on, and it was a hot summer day. It must have been like July or August, something like that. And that memory just always stuck with me. So it's really interesting because you and I talked about this component of, in rock and roll and how this is leveraging. It's like leveraging a feeling. It's like an emotion. When I think about that memory, it reminds me of summertime, right? So, yeah, transitioning the marketing and the sales side into what I'm doing. I think that everybody has a unique journey, a unique story. It's about leveraging that story with your gifts, your experiences, and using that to impact the lives of other people. So the way that marketing plays in, of course, is spreading the message, reach frequency. You want to get the word out there. It's like if you were representing a product and you had a brick and mortar, you could put a big sign up outside and have an open light on, and people would know you're ready for business. In the service-based world, it's a little bit different. So the marketing component is like your big sign. It's like you saying, hey guys, I'm open for business. I'm here to help. The sales component comes into this, of course, because you have to find the people to help, and I think about sales is maybe an icky word to some people, but when you really break it down, sales is the oldest profession that's been around. So, all the way back to the trade and barter system. If you had a neighbor and you had goats and they needed some chicken, or they had chickens and you needed to trade, you could do that. So sales has been around forever. It's really finding the people that need your service, which again, you spread the word through marketing, and the origin is using your experiences and gifts to really change the lives of others.
And I think you're right. There, sales does feel icky because you deal with a lot of rejection, right? And so if you are, and you work with a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a lot of who you work with are coaches and business owners.
Yes, sir. Yeah, primarily business owners, coaches, financial advisors.
And so helping them see that nothing gets done until somebody sells something, right? So if no matter how pure you are as a financial person, right, or somebody who's not doesn't think themselves as sales, part of it all is what you think.
It's the lifeblood. And that perspective component that you talk about, yeah, sales is the lifeblood. It's what keeps the business operating. But then that perspective component, it's so fascinating. We talked about this in our group earlier this morning about how there are societal and cultural impacts on the way that we view things. But the bottom line is the perspective that we hold. That's the world that we actually live. The way that we see it. And so it's so important to be able to regulate your mind from a professional level, from a personal level, an emotional level. And I think that we've seen one dimensionality a lot, which is basically like a centered focus on income and career. And multidimensionality is the answer. So, tying that all back, yeah, sales, there is a lot of rejection in that, and that can be tough, but I think that's part of the personal journey too, right? It's like you're going to face adversity, you will face setbacks, and that makes you tough as well. Often, I think we see some of our toughest times in the moment as, quote unquote, terrible, but later on, we view them as some of our greatest teachers. So, really interesting journey.
So,
Go ahead,
ahead.
Tom. Go ahead.
No, I'm just curious for the people that you coach, are there some common themes that come up, issues, themes, goals, principles? Do you see that, or is everyone completely different from the other?
I think there's a basic structure. If I were to reduce it to the simplest form, there are ultimately three components that I see in commonality. The first one is identity. There are a lot of people that either don't have clarity on their identity, or they're perpetuating traps that bring them back to the past or the same identity. So number one is having a very clear identity. There's an Arnold Schwarzenegger quote that I love. It said, you can have the best boat, the best crew, and the best captain in the entire ocean, but if you don't have an end destination, you'll just float around aimlessly. So people need to have that identity. They need to have that direction. That's one very common theme. The second piece, and probably the bigger piece of the two, are limiting beliefs. As we go through life, we experience things and we make conclusions, we create patterns, survival techniques, defense mechanisms, all these things. And what ends up happening is it creates a belief system. So our entire life is built up on these belief systems and these standards that we hold, right? So the second common theme would be those limiting beliefs, getting to the actual root of those belief systems, those stories, if you will, addressing them head on, and then recreating them. So know where you're headed, know what's prevented you from getting there. Then the third and final piece would really be the strategies. So now that I know where I'm going, I know what stopped me, how the heck do I do it? You got to have a broken down strategy with some clarity. And of course, you might fall off the tracks here and there, but ultimately with that direction, you're going to make progress every day.
And I think that kind of honesty and accountability that comes with your coaching component that I've seen, well, okay. So I just saw Jerry Colonna, who wrote Reboot. Are you familiar with his book? And
briefly,
he said something that just kind of stopped everybody in their tracks at Denver Founders event this past week. And it's, what am I as a leader doing to be complicit in the things that are not going the way I want them to go? And right, you just got to the bottom of those things that help you analyze what are you doing to be complicit in your failure.
Absolutely. And in that atmosphere, there's also an element of emotional intelligence, right? I think that there has been a shift in the average person's identity, at least within the United States over the last 100 years or so. But it's really interesting how all of this stuff ties together. You talk about that role, the leadership, and how it all comes down to EQ ultimately. Emotional intelligence, understanding and empathizing with others. And that's the beauty of the journey, is that no person is perfect. Even when you look at the greatest of the greats out there, they're human. They have slight flaws, but it's about that constant pursuit of being better, that progression. If you ask any human what their definition of success is, it is some greater form of where they are right now, right? It's about becoming a better version of them. And that's ultimately what any personal development webinar, seminar is about. It's about mastering oneself. That's the journey. and you take those lessons and experiences as you're going on the journey, and you use that to help other people. I mean, it's just such an awesome ride.
When I was right out of college, I got to see Zig Ziglar live speak. And you take somebody like that who's built a life around sales, right? But at some point, they realize that these things that you talk about are really about becoming a better human being, and that makes you a better salesperson. And so that really was my takeaway from Zig is just being willing to grow, and then you reach success, and then you help others. I know that that is a lot of underlies of what you do and some of the work I've seen you do.
Yeah, well, it's a great viewpoint here, Keith. I mean, if you think about one commonality that all geographic locations and historical eras have in common, is the power of stories. Well, why are stories so relatable? Well, yes, they touch on the sensory acuities, and that's great. So we can relate and feel it and get into it. But it's also left behind for elements of growth. I mean, look at hieroglyphics, look at the paintings on the cavern wall. It was leaving these images, these stories behind so that the next people to come could go, oh, I recognize and see that. Let me act a little bit differently, right? So it's an awesome process. It all comes together. But yes, that work of being with people, and I think when we tie this back to the rock and roll era, I love that, because when I shared that story before about the Sublime, well, what was that? It was a feeling. It was feeling the summertime, the freeness, the sun, all those awesome things that come with summer. And so when we think about music, that's an element of music, right? It's how does it make you feel? It pulls all these things together. It's almost a story in a way. It touches on those sensory acuities. So music is such a powerful element. And I love how you guys tie all this back together.
One thing that comes to mind is we're talking about improving yourself as a human being. And by doing that, then it improves your life and your relationships and your business and, everything else that you do. You've got I'm not sure what to call it, a program, a system, principles, those sorts of things that seem to have more the stickiness factor. Does that make sense? It's like weight loss programs. There are people who lose a ton of weight, but then over the course of the next year or two, gain it all back, and they're back to where they started. What is it generally that really makes something stick when it comes to personal development?
Mm.
It's a really great question, Tom, because the truth of the matter is that majority of the information out there is the same information that's been around. You talk about Zig Ziglar, he was one of the best storytellers out there. I can recite several of his stories right now. Amazing speaker, right? So this element of a commonality in personal development it's an interesting one, Tom. I think that we really see a storyline here. The thing that I think that is brought to the table is the information is very similar, but it's the storyline that you bring into it. It's the experience, it's the energy, it's all of these things brought together, right? So it's not necessarily new information that's out under the sun. We've been seeing the similar problems under the sun for many years, just how we are bringing the information about, right? So I think that bringing that personal element, that authenticity. So when you talk about that stickiness, I mean, that's what it is. People are all in the people business. It doesn't matter what service or product you have. We're in the people business. So taking that element of authenticity, being yourself and connecting, there's an energy out there, that law of attraction I truly believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a great question, Tom. And, I have to say, we're going to have to start nicknaming you Great Question, Tom.
Well, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah. So, I know. I want to get to tell us a little bit about how you got here, and then I want to explore some of the ways that you work for people. I know you have a retreat, but let's dive in a little bit about how you activate what you do with people.
again, I'll leverage a story. I'll do this quickly, but how I got to this point was a compilation of dark times. Growing up, had a tremendous amount of adversities and dark experiences, pressed all together in a very short period of time. I didn't think I was ever going to live past 20 years old. I stumbled into the sales world, which actually changed my life because of the culture, the camaraderie, the support. That was something that I didn't have in other environments. So I leveraged that, and it gave me a confidence that I didn't find anywhere else. And the money was great as well. But the skills that I learned as a 17-year-old kid, breaking all kinds of records in the sales industry, it gave me the fortitude, the time management, all these awesome things. So I took those lessons and experiences, and I went into different industries, just testing, seeing where I really fit in, the real estate world, the financial world. And ultimately, I knew that I wanted to do something more fulfilling. I had gone from this journey of being this lost, hopeless, broken kid, with no aspiration or hope for the future. Didn't even think I was going to live past 20 years old. And I was able to take those experiences and convert them into some of my greatest lessons. And so I wanted to give that back to the world. And no doubt there's still a massive journey that I am on. I'll never be perfect. There's so much to learn, and an openness and growth. But to be able to share some of these tools, these tricks, this structure with other people that has worked for me and thousands of others, it's incredible. So ultimately, that's how I got to this place. The work itself that I'm actually doing, there's a lot of one-on-one work, people that need a little bit more intimacy, focus on where they're headed, what's prevented them in the past and how to actually get there. I love doing that, giving people extreme clarity. And then we have group settings. So of course, Keith, you've experienced this, our Tribal Stoics, currently the men's group. So that allows us to create a space for others and have healthy, deeper conversations. The next piece to that, which is part of that community, is the retreat. So we've got a retreat coming up in July. Extremely thrilled for this. This is a great opportunity for men to rejuvenate, recenter, really gain some structure, deeper male bonds, coming out with better relationships, mindset, all that good stuff. But it's also going to be a blast. We've got a chef set up. We've got a river trip. We've got some mountain climbing, some hikes, disc golf course, shooting range, all kinds of things. So it's going to be an absolute blast. But that's really for more of that intimate bond to grow forward. And that's in the Blue Ridge Mountains here shortly. And then, also we've got the networking group. So we love connecting people, great people, and do some speaking. Love helping small organizations to bring teams together and at the highest level. And also yesterday, handed in the next book. So we've got another book coming out here right around the corner.
Tell us about your books.
All right.
The first book is that guy right there, and that is Selfish to Selfless, and that is basically taking your time, energy, effort and directing it in 5 particular domains. Again, you want to build that multi-dimensional individual, so you focus your energy and effort in each of those realms to become the best version. This next one coming out is about growing through adversity, so that shares some personal stories for relatability, but ultimately it helps people take their worst moments in life and have tools in their toolbox to reframe those moments and actually squeeze the juice out of them and become a better version. So ultimately a self-help personal development book. And then you'll also see our little Stoicism handbook coming out soon too.
Work.
You have really focused on his purpose. And I read where you have the 5 pillars of fulfillment through purpose. Can you talk about those?
Absolutely. I think they stack together, and you may study different environments that will share different orders, but the concept is the same. Essentially, the body, a strong body houses a strong mind. There's a fortitude, a resilience, an achievement that comes by doing something you don't want to do physically every single day that allows you to step into harder domains, right? It centers you. And then that goes into the mind. So when you have a fortified mind and you have tools to help center and stabilize your mind, then you're going to think, you're going to feel more clearly. Then you get into the relationship, the heart component. Nothing will derail you as bad as a quarrel within your relationship. So having strong, sound relationships, a support system, that ultimately is going to help you get into that next realm. So you got a strong body, a strong mind, great support system. Then you get into the spiritual component. And that's understanding ultimately the big picture, what comes after life. And that's a personal journey that only you can go through, right? So once you have a really good grasp of those domains, then the fifth and final pillar is purpose. Being able to focus on a purpose, pulling it all together. What is it all for? Why was I sent here? Any great philosopher will tell you that's the biggest question of humanity. Why am I here? So when you take those four elements, what it allows you to do is face some of the fears, the demons, if you will, the obstacles, face those things. And through that journey, you transform into your greatest self. And that's the ultimate purpose. So that's really the summation of selfish to selfless.
Yeah. Really well thought out.
Yeah. Wrote that book in 2 months.
Did you really? Wow.
Some people don't do it in a lifetime.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
So, I think we're at a good point here, and I love how you started with rock and roll, and you related it to that emotional experience, and then everything you've talked about, builds off of EQ. It's being able to see yourself as a whole and see yourself relative to the world in a balanced way. And that's what gets you to be successful. Talk a little bit about, and rock and roll is an attitude, right? It's a never say die rock and roll, right? When people, there's a certain achievement that comes from it. Tell us about, let's dig in a little bit about your rock and roll experience and your connection to that in business.
I'll tell you one in particular, Keith. I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii as a 20-year-old kid. Never been to the state, didn't know anybody there. And a series of events occurred, which basically had me homeless. So I moved to this state, never been to, super expensive at the time. This was in 2011. And I basically just lived on beaches for a little while. I ended up finding a friend, rebuilt everything. But rock and roll ties into this because that was one of my aspirations. I loved music. One band that I really liked that was from Hawaii was Pepper, but my idol in the music scene was really Jimi Hendrix. So I loved the Fender Strat. And one day, after I had recouped and really built some things back up when I was in Hawaii, I stumbled across this music shop and they had this pearl handled Fender Strat that was like my dream guitar. So I made a game plan and bought it. And, I didn't care about anything else when I was coming back to the mainland, but bringing that guitar with me. So like you said, rock and roll is an attitude. It's a feeling. And there's something really cool about that. And when you really break down the neurology of music and how we interpret it and how it can share a message, like the other day I was talking to a friend and he was like, man, Pink Floyd is just timeless, right? Their music just lives on. There's something about the message and the tone. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. When you take that out of the story, from where I was, taking those dark times, it almost served as a guiding light. It gave me an emotional outlet. I would go get on that guitar and jam. I even went as far as posting some remixes that I personally made on Pepper's Facebook page at the time. So yeah, music has always been a massive piece to me. It was an outlet. It was a rejuvenation. And that tied back into business because, one thing that I have found about elite performers, both in business and in sports, is that they have an outlet. So the high demand of the intensity, their main focus, where most of their time, energy, effort goes, is great. But if you want to get the ultimate results, and we talk about the creativity of music, one of the ways to do that is to separate, is to have hobbies and outlets that are not necessarily directly connected to it. So for me, that was music for the longest time. I loved to just get on the guitar and jam, and I had a lot of different idols out there, very unique style, I'd say, but it has been like I said, a guiding light for me.
What a great journey.
Well, great. And by the way, Keegan, here's your Strat.
You got it. I love
Yeah.
it.
But at its heart, a great song tells a story, and there are amazing storytellers and musicians, singers. I think of like a Bob Dylan, who's absolutely timeless, or an Elvis Costello, or what you listen to their song, and it tells a very vivid story. That to me is one of the things that I absolutely love about music.
All Along the Watchtower, just to bring it on home, Bob Dylan,
Oh
Jimi
yeah.
Hendrix, and that's been my ringtone since I could first put a ringtone on a phone. The lead guitar opening of All Along the Watchtower by Hendrix.
Yes.
Yeah. Bold as Love is tattooed right here. So
Wow.
All right.
Oh, you're legit, dude. Any other music that you're into or great concert stories? I mean, picking up a Hendrix guitar in Hawaii, I think ranks up top of our stories. So I'm pressing for another one.
I actually surprisingly have a lot of really good music related stories. One of them is not appropriate for live streaming, but another one is really cool. I had this friend, Mike, in college, and he went through this really terrible breakup. And he was with this girl for 2 years, 2.5 years. They broke up. He was heartbroken, devastated. They had a concert scheduled, and I went to High Point at the time, so this was scheduled at the Cat's Cradle, which was in Greensboro. It was only about an hour and a half drive out. And he was like, man, I got this concert tickets. She just broke up with me. I don't know what to do. And I had a bunch of commitments. This was not a good time in the year. It was like right before finals. Everybody was preparing, studying. So it was kind of like a sacrifice to go. And I didn't even really know the band, admittedly. 30 Seconds to Mars was the band. And anyway, I decided I'll go with you, man. Let's go to this concert. So we go out to the Cat's Cradle, smaller venue. I think the max capacity in there is like 350 something, and not a huge spot. So we get in there, and he's got a broken arm. Girlfriend just broke up with him, and we're standing there, and I just feel this tap on my shoulder, and this lady said, "Hey, do you guys want to come up on stage?" I was like, oh my gosh, of course we do. Like, let's go. So I grab Mike, him and I go around the back. We come up on stage and we sing their song, Kings and Queens, with them on the stage live. Like, they're recording this. I mean, incredible memory. And before we departed after that song, we ended up getting a guitar pick and a drumstick from the drummer, and I happened to grab them from him. So I went over. I was like, hey, can I get that? And they gave it to me, and I brought it over to Mike, and he didn't know that I had him. So I waited until we got into the car to leave. And I was like, listen, man, I know this was tough for you. So I handed him over the drumstick and the guitar pick, and he ended up framing it. He was like, no joke, like sitting there crying, like, man, this is one of the best memories ever. So that was a really cool one.
Wow. Great
story. How personal it becomes.
Yep.
And how that triggers memories. A song, or every time that he looks at that drumstick and pick, he'll remember that experience and why it was so critical to him. And that's another beauty of music.
It's really fascinating. You're our 20th show in this format, and you kind of sum up, right? Everything that you've brought to this conversation is really getting to the depth behind it, right? And I know you do a lot of work with men, but I know in the networking groups, it's all women, and you've talked about maybe doing some tribal Stoics for women. So it's really the rock and roll attitude that I think you have to have if you're going to be in sales and marketing today, right? And what you've summed it up, you've brought it down to a more human, basic level in today's show. So I'm really just thrilled that you bring this perspective, because we've been talking to people now for 19 other episodes. And Tom, you said it. We were having a beer with Amy and Mark the other day, and you said it. People just let their guard down. Their smile comes up.
Yeah. A flood of memories.
Yeah.
Can't help but not. If you mention an artist, it's typically associated with a memory.
That's right.
And we associate that with our best times in life and our worst times in life and our love and our loss. And yet we are resilient and we go on, right? You go on to the next city if you're a band, and you pick up and you play again. And so there's a lot of depth that I don't think that, Tom, when you and I sat down and said, let's do rock and roll sales and marketing, I don't think we ever saw that we'd get so many people's perspective and how personal this is.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I just to touch on that really quickly, Keith, I think that there is an element of resilience. If you've ever been in a band or know what that's like, that is not an easy pursuit, right? At the beginning, you are practicing, probably around working some sort of job so you can feed yourself. Usually you're scrounging together money to travel around in a van if you have one with your buddies. You got to lug all the equipment around. You got to set stuff up. You do a show that you barely get paid any money for. And a lot of the bands out there do this for years, just hoping for the big break, the record label to come through. What better analogy is there for entrepreneurialism? Now I know the focus here is marketing and sales, but I mean, what entrepreneur doesn't have marketing and sales? So I think that that's just such a really good relation to it all. It's like, man, you got to have that tenacity, that resilience, that wherewithal to go through the journey of being a business owner. And you're going to stub your toe and you're going to hit some roadblocks, but you learn from it. You move on. You take that information, you try a new song, you get some feedback from the crowd, and it's just this awesome journey. So I do genuinely believe not only the emotions and the stories and the feelings and the outlet and the relatability that we all have in music, which is really cool because one song can mean something totally different to somebody else, but also, again, that comparison in the business world and how much you can relate, if you've ever been in a band, to the journey of running a business, starting a business. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
And, Tom and I come out of a corporate world, and there's a lot of things that are different, but there's a lot that's the same. When you work with a good executive, like I've had the blessing to do, right? And they say, go create the storytelling for the annual trade show, right? Or build me this blog online that has videos and webinars, and right, they're doing it because they know they need to build an audience. They need to inspire their team. They need to be relatable, and they've gotten media training. So it's different than the entrepreneur, but they understand that the investment is worth it, because that's how you motivate people. As your discussion about marketing versus sales earlier, right? So it happens at the corporate level, and the sales team level in a bigger company, and it's something, as you pointed out, for an entrepreneur, it's a challenge that you must overcome.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We really appreciate your thoughts, Keegan. What's interesting to me, and I didn't realize it was our 20th, but what's interesting to me is how much I've learned and Keith has learned from each one of our guests. And I can tell you that you struck a chord with a number of things with me, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was trying to say something very similar. I'm grateful that you were on the show, because being the 20th, you've provided some really valuable perspective. Like, I'm inspired to go do the next 20 shows.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you so much for providing the space to come together, spend this time together. Yeah. Rock on, baby.
Rock on.
So as we wrap up, is there anything you want to share about how to get in touch with you? Do you have any offers? Just tell us how, you want to interact with people on the other side of the glass here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm always open to have a conversation. I can relate to what it's like being in dark times, having your back up against the wall, not really having an outlet. So providing that space for other people with extreme direction, and actionable items, and somebody to have your back. There's nothing like it. It's changed my life, and I like changing that in others. So conversations are welcome. Always have Coach Keeg at gmail.com. Can always shoot me an email.
We got a new website.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we got a new website. just tribalstoics.group. And we've got a networking group every Monday. We've got a couple men's groups for the men out there. Looking to open a ladies one too. But yeah, always love having conversations and would be happy to connect via the websites or email.
All right. Well, we hope the energy from this show, motivates you and motivates others to seek you out. And Tom, another one under our belt here.
In the books, you got it.
Yeah.
You got it. We're the lucky ones here.
We are. This has been a great experience. Very grateful for you sharing your experience, Keegan, and for everybody out there or who sees us. We do this to demonstrate how we can take a show like this and turn it into amazing content. And we look forward to sharing that with you from live here in Publio Studio.
All right.
Thank you, man.
All right. Take care, everybody.